I have a goal today that when you leave here, all of you will know more about barter. Some of you in the room, if you would mind raising your hand, you already barter in your business? So for you, I hope that you'll barter maybe a little bit more strategically. And there are those of you in the room, and you don't have to raise your hand, that whenever asked about barter, you might say, oh no, I need cash, not interested in barter. So I'm hoping that when I'm through today, you'll go, oh, I could barter strategically. So my background, I spent 20 years in the barter industry. I traveled actually the last couple of years internationally, Australia, Moscow, London, and I worked for and also owned my own barter company. The last couple of years I was an international, the executive director of our international association. It blew my mind when I went to Australia and how barter was treated there. When I came off the plane, my taxi guy was, like, I accept barter. The hotel room said, I accept barter. I mean, the hotel room, not the room. The hotel. It's kind of, never mind, let's not go there. But there was this sign saying that they accepted barter. In the United States here, and by this time I'd been in the industry 18 years, I would go into so many meetings and people didn't have a clue about what barter really was. So I worked for two companies and then started my own and then sold it to a national company. My biggest trade was $1 million media trade. The smallest trade was probably when you go for dry cleaning and it's a couple of bucks. The most interesting trade I did for a client was when his wife wanted plastic surgery. A life-saving trade that I wasn't involved in but happened is in Reno, Nevada. Someone joined a barter company and they had doctors on barter and they found out that someone had cancer that probably if he had not been diagnosed, he wouldn't be here today. So the way I was raised is if you want to buy something, you pay cash, or you save your cash to buy it, or you use credit cards. And back in the days that I grew up, there was something called layaway, which is around a little bit now, but not so much. You might borrow from a bank, and there's a friendly banker here if you want to do that. And with emergencies, you might borrow from family members. But that was kind of it. I had never really heard of something called barter, although all of us probably have bartered, whether we called it barter or not. When my husband and I got married, we got married very young, 18 and 19. We bought our first home at 19 and 20, and it wasn't until I'd been in the industry probably about 6 or 7 years that I looked back on that and saw we bartered for our first house. We were young, I didn't want to rent. For some reason I figured out that if we used FHA financing and found a house where the seller would pay closing, that we could buy a house instead of rent. But what we found was a fixer-upper, and the owner let us do all the fixing up, which kept them from expending any money, and we lived there rent-free, and we got to put in what we wanted. That was really a barter. We got to barter for that. My son's rehearsal dinner was paid partly in barter, part cash, part trade. My daughter had her first year at Lindenwood University. I owned a magazine at the time. We traded advertising. Her first year at Lindenwood was bartered. So hopefully that might pique your interest that, there's other things to do here. The simplest thing, if you want to say what barter is, it's trading something that you have for something that you might need or want. And there is something called direct barter, and we have a pass out for you so that if you want to take any notes or check off things. But direct barter is when John and I do a transaction together. I might need his services, and maybe I help him with marketing and he helps me with my accounting. That's direct barter. In that world, you don't pay a transaction fee. It's very personal, and you kind of have a control over that transaction. Now, I want to say, back when I first started in the industry, what people used to say to me was, it's illegal. It is illegal if you're not going to declare it. You need to, if you're using it in business, can be deducted as a business expense, but talk to John more about that. And if it's personal, it'll show as income. There are some disadvantages. What if John didn't want what I had? And that's how I ended up. I ended up in what we call the barter industry, where there are barter companies. And so that is a different way of bartering. And you have transactions that actually mimic our credit card, debit card. You put dollars in your account, you take dollars out. I want to go back to the disadvantages again of the one-on-one barter or direct barter. Sometimes you can't find somebody that wants what you have. It takes your time to put together the transaction, and a lot of times they're not equal. So there's, okay, I'm going to need to put some cash with it, or how do we make this work? Again, going back to the trade exchanges that are out there, they can help by you just have a transaction that is debited and credited. They help you source trading partners. You don't have to worry about the other person needing or wanting what you have. The transaction is actually handled through the exchange itself. They will help promote you for you to earn trade. They have online directories to help you in purchasing. They have credit lines. I can't tell you how many small businesses I used to help back when I had my own barter company. Maybe they were a startup and they needed to do an advertising campaign, but they really didn't have the money. We could give them a line of credit if they fit certain criteria. It was just like the bank. We couldn't just say, oh, we can, you have a product that really nobody may know about or want to buy. We can't give you a big credit line. But there were a lot of businesses, especially restaurants. Restaurants, people go out to eat. We could usually give credit lines very easily to something like a restaurant. The disadvantages to a barter company might be the product or service you want may not be available when you want it. They may have products and services that aren't close to where you live. It still will take time, and you do incur fees when you do a transaction. They usually have a membership fee and a brokerage fee and monthly statement fees. Now, not all do. There's one local company here that doesn't have the monthly statement fees, but you pay something to be part of the community, and then they earn a brokerage fee. So what reasons might there be for you to barter? And the biggest one, well, there's two to me that are the biggest. One is to conserve cash, and the other is to help you even market your company for more people to know about you. The new customers that you get, if you're doing a great job, they're going to tell other people. In the dental industry, they're very heavily referral based, and it's a way for them to have people refer their services by being part of a bartering system of some sort. It can strengthen your cash flow. If you are using barter dollars to purchase some of the things you need in your business, you're actually going to strengthen your cash flow. You need the carpets cleaned in the office. You could go ahead and write a check for it for $500, or you could use a barter transaction direct or through a barter company. What happens to that $500 stays in your company in the cash, and you've used trade, which depending on the cost of your service or product, which is another part of this, you're buying it though at your cost. So if you are a service heavy industry, which most companies tend to be, a service, it can really help you. If you're product oriented or you have a high cost in your product, you need to really look at, is it strategic for you? One of my favorite things to do with my clients when I was in the barter industry was helping them barter for things that would help them grow their cash business, which was marketing. So first looking at how do we help grow the business through advertising, marketing, things like that. Another thing is employee benefits. Sometimes we don't have the company to the level of really doing a lot of things for employees. So whether it's providing perks for them. When I sold my company to a national barter company, I became their employee. And one of the benefits I received was I had a certain amount of trade dollars. What is it called? Like a cafeteria plan where I could use them personally on. And I was going through chemotherapy, and I got to use those for things like massages and chiropractic care and things like that. And those are things that companies that barter, might want to do for their employees. It could also be giving out restaurant certificates for an employee that has done a great job. And it's also a financing tool. There were so many businesses that wanted to buy maybe an asset for their company, and they were able to use trade to do it, whether it was maybe a vehicle that was part cash, part trade, or some real estate or land. So the first place you want to start is, what do you have to trade? What is it that you have that would have a great enough profit margin that could be good for you to trade? And then do you want to do a direct trade, or do you want to look at going through a trade exchange? And with the direct trade, one of the ways that I have usually started the conversation is, this may sound like a crazy idea, but might you be interested in fill in the blank? And by putting it that way, we're giving them an opportunity to say no right off. But usually what I find is it makes people sit up and think, well, I don't know if I am or I am not, but you're not trying to talk me. I don't want to talk you into it. I want to invite you to consider it. I have my own technical term for some type of bartering that I see my friends, and even myself, I'm guilty of this. I call it loosey-goosey. It's when we're not being really clear, we do a transaction, and we figure we're going to work out the details, but we don't treat it as a real business transaction. Earlier today in the meeting, Scott was talking about doing pro bono work and putting structure around it. When you're doing a barter transaction and you're going direct, you really need structure around it, because hopefully what you want to do is create better relationships and have greater opportunities for you. As I mentioned, how do you use it strategically? Use it to grow your business. Look at ideas for whether it's social media, just what is it, printing, things like that might help you grow your business. Operationally, where are you currently spending your cash? How do you conserve it? Professional services that you might need on an ongoing basis. As I mentioned, employees, training, incentives. And a potential vendor coming to you that wants to do business with you, you might throw that back to them. You're interested in them, but it's not a budget item. So, would you consider barter? Travel, using it for business. Real estate, buying assets or other assets, equipment. One client bought some collectible artwork for their building that they were able to actually use as an asset. If you want to give back to the community, you can also use barter to help some of your favorite causes. And then the book that, there was a book that was written by Shara Dalen and myself, and the publisher I wanted business barter, they wanted personal barter. So it's The Art of Barter, how to use barter personally. So you can also use it to help you and your family. As I mentioned, my daughter and my son, I did things for them. But you can also use some of those same things like the real estate, vacation homes. There's all different ways to use barter. You can also use it to declutter things that you want to get rid of, looking at barter there. And trying to think if there's anything that I haven't said, but I love a quote from Buckminster Fuller. It's, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking. To me, barter did that. It gave me new ways of thinking. And now, who has the first question that might have around the barter industry?